There is someone whose heart keeps returning to you, even though they have spent a long time trying to convince themselves that they should let go. They long for your presence, yet fear holds them back every time they think about taking the next step. They miss you more than they are willing to admit, but they do not know if you would welcome them if they appeared again. They want to send a message, make a call, or simply find a reason to reconnect, but the possibility of being ignored has become one of their greatest fears. This silent struggle has been growing inside them for much longer than anyone realizes. It did not begin yesterday, nor did it appear overnight. It has been building little by little, day after day, hidden beneath routines, responsibilities, and distractions. But yesterday something shifted so deeply that they could no longer push these emotions aside. The walls they carefully built around their heart began to crack. For a long time they kept telling themselves that creating distance was the smartest decision. They repeated the same story again and again, believing that enough time would eventually erase what they felt. They convinced themselves that life would naturally move forward if they simply stayed busy. They filled their schedule with work. They focused on daily obligations. They distracted themselves with conversations, entertainment, and endless responsibilities, hoping each new day would make your memory fade a little more. But no matter how hard they tried, nothing truly replaced the connection they once felt with you. Every distraction only delayed the emotions instead of removing them. Every busy day simply covered feelings that were still quietly waiting beneath the surface. Yesterday, those hidden emotions refused to stay buried any longer. Perhaps it happened during a peaceful evening when everything around them became quiet. Perhaps they found themselves sitting alone with nothing left to distract their thoughts. Maybe it happened late at night while staring into the darkness, when silence became impossible to escape. Or perhaps it happened during an ordinary moment when a familiar place, a song, a scent, or even a simple object unexpectedly reminded them of you. Whatever started it no longer matters. What matters is what followed. Every emotion they had been trying to control suddenly rose to the surface at once. The feelings they believed they had mastered became impossible to contain. Everything they had been holding inside demanded to be acknowledged. That is why the emotional energy became so overwhelming. That is also why you may have sensed something difficult to explain. Sometimes emotions become so powerful that they seem to travel beyond words. There are moments when a person's inner world reaches such intensity that it feels impossible to ignore. Yesterday became one of those moments. For the first time in a long while, this person stopped running from themselves. They stopped pretending that everything was completely fine. They stopped hiding behind excuses that no longer felt convincing. Instead, they found themselves face to face with truths they had avoided for far too long. They realized that time has continued moving whether they were ready or not. Seasons have changed, life has continued moving forward, circumstances have evolved. Most importantly, they began realizing that you have been changing as well. That realization affected them more deeply than they expected. While they were trying to maintain emotional distance, something inside them quietly noticed that your energy no longer felt the same. Whether you consciously showed it or not, they sensed that your attention was becoming more focused on yourself. Your strength felt different. Your peace felt different. Your emotional presence no longer carried the same feeling of waiting. Sometimes people notice these changes without understanding how. The heart often recognizes shifts before the mind can explain them. Long before logic catches up, something deeper quietly senses that another person's energy has changed. Yesterday they felt exactly that. For the first time, losing you stopped feeling like a distant possibility. It stopped being an idea they could easily dismiss. Instead, it became something real, something personal, something that suddenly felt much closer than they ever imagined. That realization awakened a fear unlike anything they had experienced before. It was not simply loneliness. It was not temporary sadness or passing disappointment. It was the painful realization that someone truly valuable may have slipped further away while they were busy protecting themselves. It was the fear of understanding someone's worth only after creating unnecessary distance. It was the uncomfortable awareness that what once felt secure may no longer be waiting. That understanding now follows them everywhere. Their thoughts repeat endlessly throughout the day. Your name enters their mind without warning. Memories appear when they least expect them. Conversations they believed they had forgotten return with incredible clarity. Small moments that once seemed ordinary suddenly become precious inside their memory. They remember your smile. They remember your voice. They remember the comfort they felt simply by being around you. They remember feeling accepted without constantly needing to explain themselves. Those memories are becoming stronger because the emotional barriers they built are becoming weaker. When people stop fighting their own emotions, everything they buried begins finding its way back into the light. Feelings that remained hidden suddenly demand attention. Memories that seemed forgotten become impossible to ignore. That is exactly what has started happening inside them. Yesterday they finally recognized something they had been denying for far too long. They have not truly moved on. No matter how much they tried to convince themselves otherwise, every sign pointed toward the same truth. Wherever they turned, something reminded them of you. Whatever they focused on, your memory quietly found its way back into their thoughts. This became deeply frustrating. The harder they tried to escape, the more persistent the emotions became. The more they attempted to distract themselves, the louder their hearts seemed to speak. It became emotionally exhausting because nothing they tried created lasting peace. Many people believe ignoring emotions makes them disappear, yet life often proves the opposite. Feelings that remain unspoken usually continue growing beneath the surface. What is avoided gathers strength in silence. What is buried often returns with even greater intensity. Eventually the pressure becomes impossible to carry. Eventually the heart refuses to remain silent. Yesterday that moment finally arrived. This person is no longer simply thinking about you. They are being forced to examine themselves. They are looking honestly at decisions they made. They are reflecting on moments they wish they could change. They are questioning opportunities they allowed to slip away because fear, uncertainty, pride or hesitation seemed easier than vulnerability. These realizations are creating an emotional storm inside them. Every unanswered question feels heavier than before. Every memory carries greater meaning. Every possibility they once ignored now feels impossible to overlook. Storms inside the heart always seek an outlet. Because of this, you may continue noticing unusual emotional experiences over the coming days. Certain memories may suddenly return without warning. You may think about them unexpectedly. You may feel drawn to check your phone for no obvious reason. Dreams may become unusually vivid. Moments of emotion may arrive during otherwise ordinary days. Experiences like these often appear when unresolved emotions reach their highest point. Connections that once carried genuine meaning rarely disappear overnight. Physical distance changes many things. Silence changes many things. Time changes many things. Yet meaningful emotional impressions often remain alive much longer than people expect. Yesterday, this person felt those impressions more strongly than they had in months. It seemed as though every unfinished emotion demanded attention at exactly the same time. There was nowhere left to hide. No distraction felt satisfying enough. No conversation completely filled the emptiness. No achievement erased what remained inside them. Everything felt incomplete because one simple truth continued standing at the center of every thought. They still care, and caring requires vulnerability. That vulnerability has frightened them for a very long time. They spent months trying to avoid it. They convinced themselves they could stay emotionally protected forever. Yet yesterday those defenses began collapsing anyway. Without asking permission, the feelings returned. Without warning, the truth appeared. Now they find themselves standing between two completely different choices. One choice encourages them to continue pretending that none of this matters. It asks them to remain silent, continue hiding, and keep convincing themselves that distance is easier than honesty. The other choice asks something much more difficult. It asks them to admit what they truly feel. It asks them to stop running. It asks them to speak honestly, even if the outcome remains uncertain. That choice feels terrifying because courage becomes much harder when there are no guarantees. They do not know how you would respond. They do not know whether your heart still has room for them. They do not know how much has changed since the last time your paths crossed. These questions repeat endlessly inside their mind, hour after hour, day after day. Sometimes hope grows stronger. Sometimes fear immediately replaces it. One moment they imagine hearing your voice again. The next moment they imagine rejection. One moment they feel ready to send a message. The next moment doubt convinces them to stay silent once again. This constant emotional struggle has become exhausting. It steals their focus. It drains their motivation. It keeps them awake long after the day has ended. It makes simple tasks feel unusually difficult because part of their attention always returns to the same place. It returns to you. That is why yesterday mattered so much. It was not an ordinary day. It became a turning point, a moment when hidden emotions refused to stay hidden, a moment when denial slowly began losing its power. The human heart can endure uncertainty for a surprisingly long time. It can survive silence. It can survive distance. It can survive unanswered questions. But eventually every heart becomes tired of carrying emotions that have never been expressed. Eventually it begins searching for peace. Eventually it longs for resolution. That longing has become much stronger inside this person now. Whether they admit it to anyone or not, they are searching for answers. They are searching for emotional relief. They are searching for a way to quiet everything that has been growing inside them. The more honestly they examine their heart, the clearer one truth becomes. Every road leads back to you. Not because life is perfect, not because relationships never face difficulties, but because certain people leave impressions that time cannot easily erase. Some connections continue living quietly inside the heart, long after conversations end. Yesterday, those hidden impressions became impossible for them to ignore. The memories became louder. The emotions became deeper. The truth became clearer. Now they are standing face to face with something they avoided for a very long time. Your absence has affected them much more deeply than they ever admitted. Moving forward has been far more difficult than they allowed anyone to see. The feelings they believed had disappeared are still alive beneath everything else. As these realizations continue unfolding, the emotional pressure continues increasing. Once the heart finally accepts what it truly feels, returning to complete denial becomes almost impossible. They may still hesitate. They may remain silent for a little longer. They may continue questioning themselves. But something important has already changed. Something awakened yesterday. Something broke through the walls they spent so long building. Something reminded them of what their heart never truly forgot. That awakening continues even now. They want to speak to you. They want to close the distance. They want to know whether another chance still exists. Yet every time they gather enough courage to reach toward you, another fearful voice whispers that they may already be too late. And so they remain caught between hope and hesitation, between longing and fear, between the powerful desire to reconnect and the overwhelming worry that your silence might become the answer they fear the most. That inner battle has not ended. In many ways, it has only just begun. They keep imagining one question over and over again. What if they waited too long? What if they finally gathered the courage to come closer, only to discover that your life had already changed? What if the place they once held in your heart had quietly been filled by someone else? These thoughts have become impossible for them to escape. They appear without warning. They interrupt ordinary moments. They stay in the background of everything they do. The possibility of losing you completely has created a conflict they cannot easily settle. Part of them feels a strong desire to reach out and close the emotional distance that has existed between you. Another part keeps telling them to stay silent, because silence feels safer than rejection. One side wants connection. The other side wants protection. Every day, these opposite forces pull against each other, leaving them emotionally exhausted. As these emotions continue building inside them, they create an enormous amount of emotional tension. That tension does not simply disappear. It has to go somewhere. Much of that emotional energy naturally turns toward you, whether they fully understand it or not. This may explain why your own intuition has felt stronger recently. It may explain why memories have suddenly appeared in your mind without any obvious reason. It may explain why there have been moments when you felt as though they were somehow close to you, even though physical distance still separates you. While all of this has been happening, they have tried everything they know to avoid facing these emotions directly. They have filled their schedule with responsibilities. They have stayed busy with work. They have surrounded themselves with daily routines. They have looked for distractions in conversations, entertainment, and ordinary obligations. They believed that constant activity would eventually quiet their thoughts. But emotional truth rarely disappears simply because someone refuses to look at it. Feelings have remarkable patience. They remain beneath the surface long after people convince themselves they have moved on. They wait quietly. They remain hidden. Then, when enough pressure has built inside the heart, they rise again with even greater intensity. Yesterday, that hidden pressure reached a level they could no longer contain. Everything they had been pushing away began returning all at once. The emotional walls they had carefully built started breaking apart. The thoughts they had tried to silence became louder. The memories they believed were fading suddenly became vivid again. Their heart refused to stay quiet any longer. In that moment they were forced to admit something they had avoided for far too long. You are still deeply important to them. You are not simply an old chapter they occasionally remember. You are not just another face from the past. Your absence still creates an empty space inside their emotional world. Your memory still carries weight. Your presence still lives within them in ways they can no longer deny. That realization brought with it a surprising amount of fear. Once someone fully accepts the depth of their feelings, pretending those feelings no longer exist becomes almost impossible. They suddenly understand that your influence has never truly disappeared. Your words still echo in their mind, your energy still affects them. The emotional connection they believed they could control has continued existing beneath everything else. For someone who has spent so much time creating emotional distance, this realization feels overwhelming. The fear they are experiencing is not only about missing you, it reaches much deeper than that. It is also about regret. It is about recognizing opportunities they failed to appreciate. It is about wondering whether different choices could have changed everything. It is about asking themselves if there is still time to repair what once seemed broken beyond repair. Questions that once seemed unnecessary now repeat endlessly inside their mind. Did they misunderstand you? Did they allow fear to make decisions that love should have made? Did they convince themselves they were protecting their heart while actually pushing away someone who truly mattered? These questions have become impossible to ignore. The emotional pressure has not remained inside their thoughts alone. Their body has begun carrying the weight as well. Human emotions often reveal themselves physically long before people are willing to admit what they truly feel. The body frequently speaks the truth that the mind keeps trying to silence. That is exactly what happened yesterday. They may have noticed a strange heaviness in their chest, not pain caused by illness, not discomfort caused by physical injury. Instead, it felt like invisible weight pressing down on them. It followed them throughout the day without any clear explanation. No matter where they went or what they tried to focus on, that feeling remained. This kind of emotional burden usually develops slowly. Every conversation left unfinished, every message never sent, every apology never spoken, every honest feeling held back. None of these disappear. They quietly gather beneath the surface until carrying them becomes emotionally exhausting. Yesterday, that burden became heavier than ever before. There may have been moments when they stopped in the middle of what they were doing and stared into nothing. There may have been moments when they took slow, deep breaths without understanding why. There may have been moments when emotions rose so suddenly that they struggled to explain what they were feeling. Their heart had already accepted something their mind was still trying to resist. The struggle also followed them into the night. Rest has become increasingly difficult. Even when they manage to close their eyes, genuine peace refuses to stay with them. Sleep no longer feels restorative. Their body rests, but their thoughts continue moving. Their subconscious remains active long after the day has ended. Old memories continue returning. Unanswered questions continue searching for resolution. Emotional conversations replay themselves again and again. As a result, sleep becomes lighter, shorter, and more restless. They wake unexpectedly. They find themselves staring into the darkness. They think when they should be sleeping. They replay moments that seemed ordinary at the time, but now carry completely different meaning. The quiet hours have become especially difficult because there are no distractions left. There is no work demanding attention, no conversations filling the silence, no responsibilities pulling their focus elsewhere. In those peaceful hours, the only voice they cannot escape is their own heart. That silence repeatedly brings them back to you. They remember little details they believed were forgotten. They remember expressions on your face. They remember conversations that once seemed insignificant. They remember feelings they never fully understood until now. Their imagination begins exploring different endings, different conversations, different decisions, different futures that never happened. The human mind naturally searches for closure whenever emotions remain unfinished. Yet for them, this connection has never truly reached an ending. Something inside them continues believing there is still more to understand. There is still more to say. There is still something unresolved waiting for its moment. That is why your memory continues returning so naturally. That is why yesterday became emotionally overwhelming. Resisting these feelings has demanded more energy than they ever expected. Constant emotional resistance slowly drains a person. It steals motivation. It creates mental fatigue. It leaves the heart tired even after a full night's sleep. Emotional conflict consumes enormous amounts of energy because the mind is constantly trying to control something the heart refuses to release. From the outside, they may appear perfectly normal. They continue handling responsibilities. They continue showing up for work. They continue speaking with family and friends. They continue moving through ordinary life. But inside, they feel emotionally worn down. Every day they continue fighting the same invisible battle. Acceptance pulls them one way. Denial pulls them another. Hope asks them to move closer. Fear tells them to remain exactly where they are. Longing encourages action. Pride encourages silence. Looking forward competes with looking backward. Living inside this kind of emotional conflict comes with a price. They have been paying that price for longer than they realize. The people around them may have begun noticing subtle changes. Perhaps they seem quieter than usual. Perhaps they smile less often. Perhaps they become distracted during conversations. Their attention drifts unexpectedly. Their eyes seem distant even while they are physically present. The natural excitement they once carried now requires conscious effort. Part of their emotional energy remains somewhere else. Part of their attention never fully leaves the connection they continue carrying inside themselves. Even ordinary pleasures have begun losing some of their brightness. Food no longer tastes quite the same. Activities that once brought enjoyment now feel strangely empty. Social moments become harder to fully appreciate. Nothing outside has truly changed. What has changed is the emotional condition of their heart. When someone carries unresolved emotions for a long time, everything else begins losing color. Joy becomes quieter. Motivation becomes weaker. The world itself seems less vibrant because the heart remains focused on something unfinished. Yesterday they felt this more clearly than ever before. No distraction seemed powerful enough to replace what they were missing. Temporary comfort quickly disappeared. Every attempt to move on eventually led their thoughts back to the same place. Their heart continues searching for understanding. Their mind continues searching for clarity. Something deep within them continues searching for peace. Even small everyday experiences have started awakening powerful memories. A familiar melody suddenly captures their attention. A certain fragrance reminds them of another time. A stranger passes by who briefly resembles you. A simple word spoken during conversation unexpectedly brings your memory back into focus. For just a few seconds, everything feels incredibly close again. For a brief moment, they almost forget the distance between you. Then reality quietly returns, bringing another wave of longing with it. Yesterday, these moments happened again and again. Their mind became unusually sensitive to anything connected with you. Every reminder felt important. Every memory felt stronger than before. Every emotional trigger carried unexpected intensity. Without thinking about it, they found themselves checking their phone more often. They paused during ordinary tasks. Their attention drifted without warning. They turned around after hearing voices that sounded vaguely familiar. None of it was planned. None of it was intentional. Something much deeper continued directing their attention toward you. Their logical mind may still argue against these feelings. Their pride may continue resisting them. Their fears may continue creating excuses. Yet beneath all of that, another part of them keeps moving in your direction. That is why their emotions have become so intense. That is why their inner world feels unsettled. That is why yesterday represented an important emotional shift that they cannot simply dismiss. The most remarkable part of this experience is that it does not require anything mysterious to explain. Human beings leave lasting impressions on one another. Deep emotional experiences change the way the mind remembers, feels, and responds. Some people become part of our inner world in ways that continue long after physical distance appears. Once someone has touched your heart deeply, that influence rarely disappears overnight. It becomes woven into memory. It becomes part of emotional patterns. It becomes part of how we understand ourselves and the people we love. Many thoughtful psychologists and philosophers explored this reality throughout history. Carl Jung often spoke about the hidden depths of the human psyche and the powerful influence unconscious emotional connections continue to have on our lives. He believed that people remain connected through layers of the mind that are far deeper than ordinary awareness. Emotional experiences leave lasting psychological patterns that continue shaping behavior long after circumstances have changed. Perhaps that is exactly what this person is experiencing now. They are no longer struggling with a simple memory from the past. They are facing an emotional truth that has remained alive within them all along. Yesterday they finally stopped running from it. Today they continue feeling its presence. And with every passing day, they move one step closer to accepting feelings they spent far too long trying to deny. Because some connections cannot be erased simply by creating distance. Some emotions cannot be silenced simply by waiting. Some people continue living quietly inside the heart until the moment arrives when the truth finally becomes stronger than fear. Carl Jung believed that the human mind is far more connected than it first appears. He suggested that beneath our personal thoughts, memories, and experiences, there is a deeper psychological foundation shared by every human being, We often think of ourselves as completely separate individuals, each living our own story, making our own choices, and carrying our own emotions. Yet Jung proposed that beneath everything we can easily see, there is a hidden layer where human experiences quietly overlap. Picture two mountains standing miles apart. From a distance, they appear completely separate. Each rises on its own, each faces different weather, each seems untouched by the other, but beneath the earth, they belong to the same land. The same foundation supports both of them, even though the surface creates the illusion of complete separation. Human relationships often work in much the same way. On the outside, people move in different directions. They create distance. They stop talking. Their lives seem to separate. Yet beneath the visible events, emotional connections can continue existing long after physical contact has faded away. This may explain why certain people suddenly appear in our thoughts without warning. It may explain why an old memory arrives during an ordinary day. It may explain why someone you have not spoken to for a long time suddenly feels emotionally close, even though they are physically far away. Jung explored ideas like these through what he called the collective unconscious. He believed that all people are connected through deep psychological patterns that exist beneath conscious awareness. Within this understanding, he also introduced another remarkable idea known as synchronicity. Synchronicity describes meaningful coincidences that cannot always be explained through ordinary cause and effect. These moments often leave us wondering whether something greater is unfolding behind the scenes. You think about someone after months of silence, and moments later their name unexpectedly appears. A familiar song begins playing just as a forgotten memory returns. A dream feels strangely important, only to discover later that it reflected something happening in another person's life. Experiences like these often feel too meaningful to dismiss as simple accidents. From Jung's point of view, these moments suggest that our inner world and the outer world are sometimes connected in ways that ordinary logic cannot fully explain. Life occasionally reveals patterns that seem invisible until the exact moment they unfold. Yesterday may have become one of those unexpected turning points,